And many of the people that are waking up now are not people that have had a history of being in the spiritually awakening crowds. So they're kind of new to this, and they even more so are going to need some help, some guidance, some resources, some understanding. They need a place to feel seen.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy that you've joined us again. I am with my beautiful friend, Mary Reed, and this is Mary's second go-around, which I'm so grateful for. So thank you for coming back, Mary.
Oh, it's my joy. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited about this conversation. We're going to talk about Mary's book, her most recent book that she's published. And it is divine timing that this book is being published at the time that it is, when there's so much going on energetically and with our personal growth and all of the experiences that we're all having and having to navigate through, which can be really challenging. And so, Mary, would you like to start with a little bit about the book?
Yeah, sure. So as a reminder, this is my second time with you all, and the last time I gave a little introduction about my background and history. So I have 24 years of metaphysical and mystical experiences that I didn't plan for. They just kind of unfolded. And this is my fourth book that I've written, and this is very different than my other three. And when I write a book, I just wake up writing. That's how I know my next book is coming. I wake up into it and start writing. And this year, I woke up into knowing that I was going to write a guidebook. Not a book about all of the teachings and the wisdom and the metaphysical experiences, but the journey itself and how to navigate all that's happening in our awakening journey. And that you mentioned earlier, this is divine timing. That's exactly right, because there's more and more and more people waking up. And so I'm aware, given my own experiences and the thousands of people that I've worked with over the years, that we don't really have resources to turn to say, okay, so I'm waking up and I'm confused and I'm having these experiences and I need some help. And we haven't really had good resources for that. So I woke up knowing that it was time to write this book. And the title is Navigating the Wondrous Holy Shit Show of Awakening, a guide for individuals, spiritual leaders, practitioners, and media. And do you mind if I say a little bit about the title?
Yes. I mean, no, I don't mind. Yes, please.
Got it. We're so in sync here. The reason I chose that title is because our awakening journeys, whether we're waking up through spiritually transformative experiences that are really catapulting and wild and inspirational and transformative, or whether we're kind of waking up gradually, just knowing that life is changing, we ourselves are changing, we're kind of growing out of relationship and job and all these kinds of things. It has wondrous components to it. It has a sacred feel to it, but it also can be such a shit show. And we don't really talk about that chaos. So often, if you tune into various programs or you read books, it's all about the experiences, the wisdom that we glean, which is all beautiful and helpful. But we need to have resources where we can also talk about, okay, all of this is happening and I'm struggling. I'm confused. I'm not finding my way through this, and I need some help. So that was the reason for the book, and that's what I woke up into, just having it sort of come through me. And the book is all kinds of information about what is awakening, basically, with spiritually transformative experiences and without them. And then what kind of phenomena do we have, like in a transformative experience? What kind of challenges do we face once we've had those? And then how do we manage it? What are the tips for managing it? What can we look forward to, and all that kind of stuff? So yeah, it's chock full of good stuff.
It is. And when I read it, I remember telling you that it felt like a little pocket guide. It's like, here's the little guidebook, stick it in your pocket and keep it handy because it's going to help you find your way.
Yeah, or someone who's going through it, or if you're a practitioner or a spiritual leader, people in your congregations or your practice, that are coming to you, because there's going to be more and more and more and more of us. And many of the people that are waking up now are not people that have had a history of being in the spiritually awakening crowds.
Right.
So they're kind of new to this, and they even more so are going to need some help, some guidance, some resources, some understanding. They need a place to feel seen.
Yeah.
So that's what this book does.
Well, and from what your experience is and with my experience, we both work with groups. And so we're actually witnessing people, what the words that's coming to me is coming online.
Yeah, exactly.
And when people are going through, and again, I'm jumping back and forth, but Mary's experience of coming online, was not an easy one. It was pretty traumatic. And so if you listeners are interested in her story, jump back to the first podcast that I had with Mary. It is posted, and you can go back and listen to her story. And so the things that Mary went through, we're both talking to people now that are finding themselves feeling a little bit lost, because either all of a sudden everything, the structure or the conformity that they've been so used to isn't fitting them anymore. And they don't know how to make those changes and where to go to. And it's confusing, and it's scary. And when you're moving into something that you have no idea about, what's coming to me now, I have my records open, my guides are showing me, it's like going from California to Washington and not having a map, and literally like, okay, I'm here in San Francisco, and all I know is that I need to go west. But how do I find my way when I don't have a map? Am I going to take a whole lot of wrong turns? Do I end up in Alaska instead of
Right.
heading due west? And so there's some obstacles along the way, and we have a lot of obstacles looking at the people and the relationships and letting go of those old things that we've done, the old belief systems that we've conformed to, and letting go with that. And as we start navigating through this and we become so uncomfortable with who we are, then we're put in this system of, I know something needs to change, but I don't know where to go. So here comes Mary Reed.
That's right. To the rescue, wearing a cape, holding my book up. For the soundtrack to it too, I'm sure. So let me just clarify. We're all waking up in unique ways. We all have our unique individual path, and there's a lot of common ground, which is, a lot of the our common ground is quite vast with people who are waking up either through sort of the methodical, slow unfolding, or through spiritually transformative experience, like a near-death experience is an extreme example. But the journey, that unique journey, is a wide continuum. So it can just be people that are realizing the old life isn't tolerable anymore, isn't fitting anymore. My life is actually falling apart. Or I just feel this deep yearning and calling, this, kind of unsatisfied, deep desire for divine connection, or those kinds of things. Or there can be a catapulting jolt of like some really extreme union with God, and a life review in which you get all of this information about your life. And so the continuum can go from just like really small ahas or noticeable kinds of shifts going on to almost traumatic things. And in my own experience, I've experienced that whole entire wide continuum, but I started at the traumatic end. I started with really profound and confusing, huge experiences that, this is 24 years ago, before we could jump on the internet, before we were talking about it in books and podcasts, before we understood the language is more common and that sort of stuff. And so in my very first book, which I wrote in 2014, is called Unwitting Mystic. And it was about the personal journey of awakening and how confusing it was at a time where therapists didn't know how to help. There weren't resources. Community was not available. There was not, there was nowhere to turn to be seen and understood. So that book actually begins with describing in great detail my suicide attempt, from being so traumatized and depressed and lost, right? So I say that to just give some honor to the heaviness of this journey for so many people, and that it's not just the heaviness of events, but even people that are waking up in that more methodical path. It can be exhausting after a while to carry that sense of never feeling like I know my way, right? This would, to use your analogy, it would be like, I left California and now I'm in Alaska and I don't feel any closer to where I'm, it's that kind of feeling. So there can be a lot of weightiness and despair and really a lot of confusion and feeling lost in our journeys. And it is that, and you and I both work with people who have those kinds of things that they're dealing with. Mm-hmm. Not everybody on that really heavy end of the spectrum, but part of the goal here is to help those people and to prevent that heavy scale in other people that are waking up. Mm-hmm. So I just want to clarify that it's not all just the lighter awakening, and it's not all the traumatic end. That it's a spectrum, and the whole intention is for people to see their own journey represented in this book.
Yeah, and that's perfect. Because my journey was very different. My journey was, what am I seeing? And mine was the gradual going into recognizing the spiritual connection. And then gradually I've been able to let go of the baggage that I needed to get to where I am today.
Yeah, but even that, Lisa, it wasn't that like back in, years ago before, not to tell tales out of school here, but that was happening before it was popular.
Oh, absolutely.
You were way ahead of the curve.
Yeah. And I look back, I said, the first thing that was really noticeable to me was seeing my grandfather in the room when he passed, and not, it's kind of like, oh, there's a black shadow in my room. Oh, it's 4:00 in the morning. Oh, but I feel safe. I feel like it's all good. And then my mother calling me the next morning and saying, your grandfather just passed away, and recognizing that was him. But that was when I was in college. And believe me, that was a little while ago, but I didn't, but at that time, again, you never heard anything about, that was in the early 80s, and you never heard anybody that did this kind of work was a weirdo, and, you stayed away from them. And so I never asked any questions. It was just kind of like, oh, well, that was interesting, and then I had some things happen. But then when I went to massage therapy school in 96 is when it's like, oh, this is the thing. And
so all of those people that people are holding their secrets, right? They're holding this stuff inside. And I have a community that I meet with on a regular basis. And as part of our groups, we have a book group, and they wanted to read my book together. And just reading the first chapter, which was about the elements, the phenomena that we can experience in spiritually transformative experiences. Suddenly, lots of people in the community were remembering things that they had kind of tucked in the background and didn't realize, oh, that was really an important transformative experience that happened, right? So when we start bringing these things to the light, especially for people that, like you, are like not going to tell people about it or whatever, we bring it into a greater context and a deeper understanding, and then we can sort of be affected by it differently. It can kind of inspire us anew in a very different way.
Yeah. And, kind of going back to a little bit like what your experiences were, when people are opening up and then all of a sudden start seeing entities and spirits, and they don't know if they're good or bad, it can take them down to that place of confusion. And not, feeling like I'm losing my mind and I don't like what I'm seeing here and I'm freaking out and I don't have a support system around me.
And they can't talk to people about it. or don't even know how to talk about it, which is often the case.
Yeah. And then obviously people don't know how to respond to it, because there's not a whole lot of people that can give that guidance. When somebody is really, really struggling with, I'm seeing things that aren't there, and then what do you say and how do you guide them? So, Mary, how does your book help individuals kind of get that information that they need?
Well, I think the layout is important because the first chapter, I have some notes here. I have like, you were one of the advanced readers, so there's lots and lots and lots of information. So there's lots of bullets with different things that are different points. So in the beginning, the very first chapter is just talking about, and I should note again that there's a difference between the people that are awakening through transformative experiences and people that are awakening without those transformative experiences in a more gradual kind of way. But I actually outline 21 different phenomena that are common in a transformative experience that people may not realize is actually quite a extraordinary moment in changing their being. We have the ones that people know about, that people will talk about often in a near-death experience, like the light, the tunnel, a sense of timelessness, a blissful meeting with God, or meeting loved ones, that kind of stuff. But then there's also things like a sense of hyper reality, that what we experienced is so much a sense of feeling so much more real than this world. And that's not something that you can just tell people and they get it, they understand it. There's not that kind of thing. There's also, surprising to most people, a sense of piercing humor or playfulness that they find in divine realms that, as you're aware, we don't really talk about that in spiritual communities, certainly never in the religious structures. We didn't talk about humorous angels and gods and that sort of thing. People often lose their sense of self or self-identity. As you said, people can meet their loved ones. They can have a life review often, but the interesting thing about those life reviews is not just seeing your own actions and your own choices, but actually seeing them from the perspective of the people that were impacted by those decisions. So getting to see sort of a shift in the consciousness vantage point. So there's all kinds of those different kinds of phenomena that people can encounter that, if they're not talked about in the common discourse, they can feel even more alone. But then the next chapter talks about, all right, so if you've had these really incredible phenomena, here's some of the challenges that you may be facing now. And the first one that is very common for people that have had really big experiences is coming back from the experience. They've had this incredible, you have a little bit of this when you go into the records and then you come back and have to deal with life. That's on a sort of a smaller scale, but it can be really disconcerting to go from bliss and ease and expansiveness to this constricted, different kind of environment here. And then people will often want to chase that high. If they had a really incredible experience, then there's a lot of efforting to try to get back there, which is leading to a sense of what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? Why can't I get connected again? And then we start going down the road of despair and depression and those sorts of things. Again, we were talking about the fear of talking about these things. How do you talk about it without sounding crazy? What if people do think you're crazy? And, all of that kind of stuff. So we start talking about it's not uncommon if you're having challenges. Your life may begin to really change. Your life priorities are changing. Your relationship may be falling apart. Your job may no longer resonate and all of that kind of stuff. So it's important for people to really see themselves and know that A, their phenomena is not, doesn't make them crazy, and B, their challenges don't make them crazy either. That there's really a lot of things going on that's quite normal, relatively speaking. So first was important for people to be seen in that. And then there's a lot of tips on, Okay, so how do you manage that? And I have my notes here because there's so many different things. But one of them is to understand, first of all, understand what's underway. This isn't an isolated thing, it's part of a larger context, right? That we're all waking up to ever more of all our potential, which inherently means leaving behind things that are obsolete. And that goes to what you were mentioning earlier about, the chaos and the changes and all of that kind of stuff. These two things are happening simultaneously, coming into the new and letting the old go. And we're in that kind of lost in between space where we don't have a sense of normalcy yet, right? So understanding that this is a gradual process, that we're integrating more and more of higher energies, of newer perspectives, so that it's a process. And that's a very frustrating thing for achievement-oriented humans to want to deal with, right? They want to get there, they want to be there, they want the challenges done. So first is accepting and understanding that this is a gradual process of integrating everything. And then all of the practices that help the mind relax are really, really important. And the reason for that is, I know people talk about that a lot, but your mind is the only thing holding all of the questions, all of the expectation, all of the confusion, all of the need for things to be different. So the more that we can come out of all of that friction in our mind and relax everything, the more we're actually allowing those higher energies to integrate, the more we can be mobilized without the battle going on. And it makes the journey a lot easier. Another really important thing that you and I know the importance of very well is finding community. Finding community in which you can be seen, you can be grounded, you can find comfort, you can find friends, and you can begin to be in an environment where you feel like you belong. And that's a really big thing, is that, oftentimes in their feeling of lost, they don't feel like they belong anywhere. So, the exploration of communities. And then a big one is really seeking out mystic or metaphysical teachings or wisdom or community or teachers, because that's where you're going to come into more of an experiential journey rather than the more intellectual, where we're trying to intellectually understand everything and make sense of everything. That's very, very different than the experience of peace and calm and revelation and connection and those sorts of things. So those are the kind of primary tips. Mm-hmm. Again, there's like 20 of them in the book. Those are the highlights.
Well, and everything that you're talking about is so important. And, bringing up that point of not feeling like you have a community or people to talk to. What I'm finding through this specific time, like as of today, so many people that are going through this shift and this awakening is what I'm going to call it, are feeling isolated. And they're finding that, that they're not comfortable in the energy of the 3D world, that, that they don't want to go out. They don't even want to go to the grocery store. They don't want to drive up and down the highway. And I'm also speaking for myself in the same way. And so I've talked to people over and over and over again about the self-isolation. But in this whole thing where we are all in this place of this unknown of, none of us have ever done this. And so as we're going through this process and we're finding that we're getting new information, we're getting new downloads, we're letting old stuff go. We're finding that we're letting go of old belief systems, the old structure, and feeling lost in this surrender of being in the moment and being in this place, to where it's fearful to transition into this next step because nobody knows what's going to happen. And so what we're finding, like what you and I, it's almost like, oh, there's my sister. She understands. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And let me say, this sense of like this shift coming and people having a desire to isolate. That's actually one of the things I mentioned in part 2, which is talking about the journeys for people that awaken without spiritually transformative experiences. That desire to isolate is a signal that you're not resonating with, being out and about. And this is usually when you begin to feel your job isn't resonating. Your relationship may be starting to be strained.
Yes.
So as people are realizing that they're just not resonating with things in the old way that they used to, they're no longer tolerable. This is one of the things we realize we've done, is tolerate, right? Things that were really not joyful, not really feeding us, not joy, not inspiring us. And we just begin to like back away from all of that. Now, some of that is like, it's our choice. We're just feeling, we want to stay at home more or whatever. But then there are also, for a lot of people, life just starts falling apart, right? Life is telling you, no, we can't sustain this any longer. So we begin to see change out of our control going on. But either way, whether we're choosing to kind of self-isolate or we're starting to sort of see things fall apart, it's still confusion. It's confusion of like, where is my place? Where's my world? Where do I stand? Where's my ground? Right? Which is where community can be so incredibly important and really add a lot of value and stability for our journey.
Yeah. And so as we navigate through this and we kind of start figuring out, oh, this is what's happening, and okay, I just need to kind of process through this. I've kind of collected a community or one or two people that can actually relate to what I'm experiencing, so that I can share the stories and I can work through, oh, okay, now I understand. So once we get to that point, then what's the next step?
Well, I think that, kind of watching your own journey, a mindful awareness of all that's underway, like recognizing, actually, I have a greater sense of peace, or actually, I have a greater sense of sort of sustained contentment that I didn't have for so long. Or actually, I have a lot of more faith in that there is this loving God, source, creator, or a sense that I matter, right? There is value to my being, my life. I actually do feel more playful. I am sort of hungry for new adventures, or I'm curious for new creativity, or, things like that. So it's important to start being mindful about where you are. And that's just taking stock of that all really is well and evolving in your highest interest. And just that awareness alone really helps ground you even further in it, and gives you a sense of more wonder and awe and appreciation of your journey. That's not to be underestimated in its value.
It's absolutely not. So it's so funny that you should say this, because my records always talk about love and being happy. And I was having, in fact, you and I had this conversation about what's people's perceptions about people that do this work that are supposed to be so stoic, and we have to be so serious. We have to have a certain persona, and laughing that's laughter and laughing. Laughing is not part of the description.
Right.
And you said to me when we did our session that you said, it's so nice to laugh. Why can't we laugh? And what my records always say is they talk about joy. And I had another discussion with a friend of mine, and we were talking about, let's just get happy. Oh my gosh, wouldn't it just be nice just to be happy? And the words came to me through the records. They were calling it the institution of joy.
The institution of joy. I love it.
And yes, and that we are moving into the institution of joy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And being able to allow ourselves to do that.
Well, it's our innate nature. That's our divine nature. I have a whole section in my book that talks about that part of our process here And I'm specifically in that part, I'm addressing practitioners and spiritual leaders to like really think about what's missing here in our service to awakening world. And that means us as individuals as well, is reclaiming the missing spirit, which is big, jolly love. Because that is what, you know, there's people have this. I find it so funny in the West how when you take like a yoga class or you go to like a spiritual service or whatever, people are like, namaste. That is not what's happening in the divine realms. The angels are not solemnly greeting each other like that. It's more like high-fiving each other at the bar. They're so happy to see each other and like, oh my God, isn't it great to be here? Isn't it awesome? Like there's this exuberant joy, which is what I mentioned earlier about people realizing this piercing humor and playfulness in the divine realms. That's what we come from. And when you look at spirituality historically has not fostered that. We've been so, especially the doctrine-based teachings, it's so heavy and so serious, and it's weighted in like morality and death and sin and salvation and all of these rules. And oh my God, like, where's the joy in that? And so therefore our spiritual life has not been buoyed, right? It hasn't been lifted to its own nature, its own potential. And so that's a big part of the awakening, is really tapping back into that happy place, right? We come from a happy place. We are a happy place, but it's just been so weighted by the challenges of the world and the serious focus of our spiritual communities. So I make a very loud call for that. And I say that, we've been living with a repressed or suppressed spirit, and living our through our lives, decade after decade, with a repressed spirit has been exhausting. And we're so fucking tired, excuse me, but we're so like, oh my God, can we not just have fun? And so that is part of the reason why I have the title of the book that's like, lighten up. It's okay to have some fun on this wondrous holy shit show of awakening, that there's a lot more to it than just the arduous stuff. Like, we can lighten up big time.
Yeah. Well, first of all, my guides laugh all the time. And those people that have listened to me enough know that they have a sense of humor, and they are not the stoic, you have to stand in the straight line and you have to dress a certain way and you have to be in the specific structure and walk with your hands folded. It's like, that is not what they laugh all the time. And it helps make me laugh too, because I recognize that, the universe is a sense of humor. They all want to be joyful and laugh as well. And so if you really think about, when we're at this place of trying to fit into the structure of being solemn, so to speak, think about what it does to your body. When you feel that way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then when you laugh and you smile, how it just brings everything back up.
Yes.
And
that's actually an important point to make about sort of facilitating integration as we're awakening as well, is that joy is an opening energy. It's a really spacious kind of energy. So it really helps expand our state, our field. And that expansion makes us available to open and expanded energies, right? So it's our natural state. So it is a form of alignment, actually. Joy is a form of aligning with our higher self, our true nature.
Yeah. And you also, if you really start to think about what these belief systems that keep us in victimhood, keep us in a way that is suppressed, step down, make us feel small. And when you think about those emotions, those beliefs, that conditioning, how it creates the energy. And I'm seeing like a brick. It makes us so heavy and so solid that it's hard for that love and that light to penetrate the brick if there's not a crack that goes through it that it can shine through.
Yes, that's exactly right. From a vibrational standpoint, because this is a lot of my work, I work vibrationally in the energetic field with people. When I do a consultation, that's where we go. We go right into there. And it literally looks like, these deep, dense, compacted layers. And then we're trying to flow in there. It can't flow. It's compacted. And then this is why we feel stuck. This is why we feel we can't get out of the old patterns. This is exactly what it is the compaction of old patterns, not just from us, from our lineage, from the collective, all kinds of things. So our awakening is like, it's almost like aerating that piece and allowing just some space for everything to begin to be set free, literally.
Yeah. And I keep seeing a little white feather just floating, and you know how a feather just floats in the air, and and that's that happy place of joy.
Yeah.
So now that we found joy, so how do we follow that up? What's the next focus on your?
Well, just to say about my book, again, I want to reiterate that there's information in this book for people that have had these transformative experiences and those that haven't, and because they're different kinds of challenges. So it's meeting everybody where they are, and that's an important thing. But it's also a book for practitioners and spiritual leaders and people in media, because as you know, if we're waking up and we know that our old job, our old way of serving, our old way of doing in the world isn't resonating anymore, then often what people do is like, oh, I think I want to be a life coach, or I want to be a therapist, or I want to be a Reiki practitioner or a massage therapist, or I want to read Akashic Records or whatever. There's a whole lot of new people coming into that level of service. And there are a lot of old timers that are in those things, especially psychotherapists and people like that, and ministers from the old kind of schools that aren't ready for the awakening world. So we kind of have this clash of the new and the old. And this book addresses a lot of the guidance and tips for practitioners and spiritual leaders to help serve our awakening world. And so if people are new to the field of, being of service, there are tips in here about how to really let that divine peace that's waking up in you guide your service. A good example of this is a lot of people think that they have to get the whole laundry list of certifications, right? So they'll just put all of their certifications online. And what the world is calling for is their unique service. Like, what's your heart serving? What's your way? It's great to be trained and understand all these things, but that's not nearly as important in the actual energy of the service as what your heart brings. So it's that kind of information about how to really tap into that, but also how to understand what the people you're serving, especially in our awakening world, all that an awakening person is bringing to the table, right? And the rapid changing that's going on, the confusion that they're holding. So just making sure that people understand, those that are in service and leader positions, the scale of things that we're holding as awakening people, and the scale of what you may be holding as well as somebody who's trying to be awakening and helping others through the process as well. But also people that are in institutions like churches, or that belong to associations, for example, therapists who belong to state regulatory associations or whatever, how to communicate all of these different changes that are going on for the people you're serving, or the communities that you're serving, how to advocate for the changes that are needed on a more systemic level. Because those of us who belong to organizations, umbrella organizations or associations, we have an opportunity to really speak up to the opportunity for change, the need for change, the resources for change, to tell our own awakening stories, and to say what kind of resources we need to address our rapidly changing world. Because historically, those in the systemic leadership positions are very set in their ways, and they're very slow to change. Religion is a great example of that, right? So when we want to speak about, there's all this wisdom coming up from the congregation, right? Is it coming to the pulpit? Is it coming to the associations that are regulating the community centers? So there's a lot of information about just really letting the divine that's coming in now really be front and center with our service, with our own journey, with how we serve individuals and our awakening world.
Yeah. And it's so significant. And because the more that we can share with those people, that the individuals that are grounded in that old paradigm, we're breaking that old paradigm. And I'm sure you come from the corporate world, so you understand, boy, it's hard to change the direction of the wheel, and so, when those corporations, business, our bosses, our friends, even if it's not from that, the religious structure or the institution structure, even if just with friendships, and just being able to recognize how, everything that we're looking at is changing that old paradigm of what that structure was and how we relate to one another, and see each other with a different light, and being able to see that light that's within you, that I can build you up instead of putting you in a box and forcing you to conform and holding you back. And so, you had talked a little bit earlier about, people like us that are getting all the certificates and just doing, everything that's out there. I constantly have conversations with people that, maybe you do massage therapy and you're doing something that is very specific to the routine or the technique, but you have your own gifts. Maybe you have your own intuition, you have your own guidance, so that you may have a foundation. But the reason why you're doing what you're doing is to bring out your own uniqueness, to provide those gifts that are within you. And you channel this collective consensus that I don't know anybody else that does that. And you definitely have your own unique way of doing it. I know this because I've witnessed it. She's fabulous, by the way. But, in the way that I do the Akashic Records, the way that I channel, I'm very different from other people. And if I tried to force or conform myself to be like everybody else, I wouldn't have the strength. I wouldn't be standing in my fullest power of who I am when I'm trying to limit my abilities by the box that I'm being put in.
Yes, exactly. And that's precisely what I talk about, especially with people that are coming new to the field, to either spiritual leadership or practitioner, is exactly that we need you. We need your essence. It's coming, that desire that you have to serve, and the opportunities now presented to you are coming to you for a reason. It's because love is seeking to express through you in service to our awakening world uniquely. So beautiful. Bring it on. Yeah. But I also want to mention one of the other things that, because we're going to kind of go the other way, which is, a lot of people that are kind of coming out more to serve the world are doing so through media, like podcasts or, blogs or that sort of stuff. And there's a whole section on media, because there can be a tendency for people to not really honor the full scale of the individual and the application of the wisdom that individual has had through their NDE or their service or their spiritually transformative experiences. And instead, there can be sort of an egoic getting into the mind of, well, how do you think the pyramids were built in Egypt? And, those kinds of discussions that you take somebody who's quite vulnerable, if they've had a spiritually transformative experience or a near-death experience, and their interviews do this all the time. That I can't tell you how many times people have asked me a question that there's no way I could know, like how the pyramids were built. But that's what they want to go down the road. And as we're doing that, we're not addressing the wisdom that's available to us. And so there's, more and more vulnerable people are being interviewed. And more people are doing the interviewing without really thinking about, what is this person's vulnerability? What is this person's limitations? How can I make sure to respect the frameworks that I'm offering, which is another one. As you know, when we have these divine connections, these divine relationships, it's all about present moment love. It's all about like really fostering our divine nature. And so often the frameworks that an interviewer or a media person will come with are conflict based. They want to talk about why is war still going on when there's this and this. So there's like we come to it from completely different things. So there's guidance for the media to understand their potential to impact us differently, to really help mobilize us in a more effective, compassionate way. So I just wanted to point that out because there can be these, everybody from a friend to the person who's in the media who's putting it out to hundreds of thousands of people, right? That we all have a role here that we can really be more mindful about navigating the wondrous, holy shit show of awakening. Yep.
Yeah, well, that's a beautiful topic because you and I have both been in that situation. And the other thing too is I think I want to show my vulnerability in recognizing that the reason why we do this work and the reason why we share this information is because of our heart. And I'm not going to say that everybody is coming from the same place. There may be some people that may be leaning a little bit more towards the notoriety or something that is, they want to be on the pedestal, perhaps. But the thing about it is that, there's a lot of us people that do this work that literally are the messengers for love. And we're sharing our messages and we're sharing this information because it was a gift that was given to us and it's being provided from the form of love. It's not a game. This is not a game to play. So that I think that understanding of what the media and the roles that people play from that perspective is extremely significant and honoring who we are and and what gifts that we have. So, is there anything else that you would like to share before?
Well, no, I think that, again, just like there are more practitioners coming in, more people, serving in different ways, there's more people starting podcasts and more people being interviewed on podcasts and not just podcasts, but other programs as well. So it was really just, keeping in mind sort of all the factors at play in the awakening world and how do we manage things as individuals, those of us who are in the throes of it, who are going through it, want to be seen and need some guidance, need some companionship, need some understanding and grounding and stability, and just overall support. And then the people that are serving those people, and then the people that are mobilizing those messages and our awakening momentum. So this book is really aiming to sort of capture the whole scale in general. Like it can't be, I can't capture everything. But just in general, what's happening as we're navigating all that's underway.
Mm-hmm. So, is there anything that you would like to share as we wrap up? Is there a last message that you would like to share?
Well, I'm going to end I try to end all these conversations just as a reminder about this big jolly love, that this is ultimately, no matter what stage we're in, no matter what our role is in the awakening, when we tap into and really invite in and align with that innate aspect of our being, it not only helps us, it helps others, and it just makes the journey a hell of a lot more fun.
So I'm going to end this by saying, let's get happy.
Let's get happy. By all means. Or let's express the happiness that we already are.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Mary, I want to thank you again for being here. But before I say my final goodbye, how can people get your book and contact you?
Yep. So it's available on Amazon. All of my books are available on Amazon or on my website at lovemaryreed.com. And I also do consultations, which is the primary way that I work with individuals. And so you can find information about that online. And then I have a community as well that people are very welcome to join. We do channel teachings every week and book readings every week as well.
And I do highly recommend Mary. So
Right back
yeah, thank you. So thank you guys. I can't find my words. Thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope to see you next time.
All right. Thanks,
Bye.
Lisa.